Okay, so are we recording these cameras or not yet?
We have everybody turn off their cell phones. We're going to have this on camera for next hour and a half. We welcome you, all of you, to this discussion we're having this evening.
So we are
Okay,
all
so-
three. You want to flip it so she sees what it is?
Yeah, she's in there.
No, I know, but let her see it. So this is what it looks like.
Okay, that's great. That's perfect.
And I have
Yours
a
is
device
recording.
that,
We're gonna make sure the battery's good with the time.
Do we need someone to
Make
give
sure
us a
we're on
countdown,
Zoom.
like the last 5 minutes?
Yeah, so here we go.
So we
Hold on
can
one
wrap
sec.
up?
Yeah, I'll do that. I have it. Okay, so we're not starting for another 4 minutes, so
Okay.
we're good.
And
Is it okay to start with the Biden presentation to get us all on the
Yeah.
That's correct, yeah. We have the Asian wild dog and then the African wild dog. Right over here, those are Asian wild dogs called doles. Dole? Yeah, it's DHOLE, dole. It almost looks like
I
a
think there
wolf
might be a
in a
couple
fox
young
mix.
persons coming.
That's absolutely correct. People will come in and they'll say that's the largest fox I've ever seen. Exactly.
Doles are native to southern Asia, including India and China.
how's it work?
I don't know.
Beautiful.
I don't know. It's turned.
Yeah, you can turn it back. Just make sure she stays in it. We're as far out as we can.
Okay, so once we start, I'll do some announcements and we'll get started.
So you said that you say that, I know Dr. Hurtalk, that you were an expert in this field. You've been involved for 48 years
Yeah.
with the top people.
Yeah, I will.
You worked with the astronauts, you and your wife, Dr. Desiree.
Yeah.
Have spoken about this at the UN and have spoken at international university forums.
Yeah.
And now we come to a very important time when the government seems to be telling the truth.
Yeah.
So let's just use this as a point of departure, and then you can take it from there.
Okay, brilliant.
Are we leaving questions and answers at the end? or
Yes,
this-
we are.
Is it from the chat people or?
It will be from here and also the chat.
Okay.
How should I refer to you? Or would I-
Zenka.
Just Zenka. Yeah,
Zenka.
Zenka. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Dr. JJ and Dr. Desiree.
Yeah. Okay, so we usually start with a minute of silence, but I'll do the announcements first and then we'll do the.
And at the end, I can say a few words
We
verbally,
still have 2
a
minutes.
meditation.
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
end.
do a 2-minute meditation.
Are you
2 minute one, yeah.
Let's see if I do that, just in case.
Oh, yeah.
Turn it around. See if it's.
It's getting it in.
It is? Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to be able. Better?
That'll be.
Okay.
One more minute and we'll start. All right, welcome everyone to this very special broadcast with Dr. JJ and Dr. Desiree Hurtalk. This is Exo Metaverse, and I want to welcome you tonight. The first thing I want to start out by saying is a special thank you to the Sedona Quantum Consciousness Center and Mark Simzak, who is our sponsor. And we are very grateful for his support. We always joke that he's got the biggest heart in Sedona. And it's really true, because when you look at this concept of we are one, and we are each other, Mark actually does that in practice. And we're so grateful for his financial support for Exo Metaverse and as we transition to the LightNet. So as many of you know, and many of you who are joining us for the first time, we'd also like to thank Alan Steinfeld of New Realities for broadcasting this show tonight. So the people who have not joined us before, if you're on the live stream, you can join us into breakout groups, which we're going to go into in a half an hour, so that you can have some more intimate conversations. So we'll post that link there where you can sign up and get the Zoom link to join us in the breakout groups. Exo Metaverse and LightNet is a search engine for consciousness. In other words, we're reaching a point where information doesn't make sense to our bodies and hearts and minds anymore, because what science is starting to prove is so far outside of what we were born and taught about. We're going to be interviewing Dean Rayden from IONS next month. Yeah, we'll talk about, these guys are already talking. This is our citizen science experiment that we did our session on last week. 2 weeks ago, where we're actually getting multiple choice responses from the radios. So Dean Rayden is going to be our next speaker, and he's really talked, and so have these two scientists, really, that we have statistical proof of things like spooky action at a distance, and all this idea that your consciousness is not even in your body, right? So there's so many amazing things that now we get to experiment with. So at LightNet and at Exo Metaverse, we take information and we bring it into knowledge, into firsthand experience. And I was thinking today, it's like the Nike logo, which is just do it. And I think our slogan should be just try it, right? So there is a big difference between understanding something like the Matrix trilogy. It's like, it's one thing to know the path, it's another to walk it. So tonight, these are such very special guests. These guys are the pioneers of the pioneers. They're the icebreakers of the icebreakers, right? These guys have been ahead, 20 to 30 years ahead of scientific research, their whole careers, right? They've been doing remote viewing before the United States government released all the papers, right? It's like these guys have been taking citizen science as a lifestyle, and they are truly my heroes. If I die and leave half of what they have left behind, I will have considered myself lucky. These guys have written the Keys of Enoch, which I'm sure you guys have heard about. It's the modern, I call it the modern Bible, right? It's the Bible that's written in my time, in my lifetime. They've traveled the entire world. They've experimented with music. They started a nonprofit called the Academy for Future Science. They've done research that has inspired the world to question everything. And tonight, we're going to have two interviews with them, but this one tonight is going to be about the most taboo subject in consciousness, which is the galactic narrative, which is outer space, which is aliens, which is what is exactly happening, right, in these other realms. They're going to talk about how we have a body and we have a mind that operates in our day-to-day life, but we also have another mind that is more interdimensional, right? So we're going to have some experiential experiences tonight. We're going to meditate. We're also going to get your survey responses. So if you haven't taken the survey, Ben's going to post it in the chat. And I just want to tell you guys again, it's an honor to see the power couple, that are my heroes.
Thank you so much.
Here. So
Well,
yeah.
we recognize the importance here at the time of what we will call quantum consciousness. And we thank Mark and we thank our dear friend Alan Steinfeld for having us aboard. But our journey begins many, many years ago when I was a young professor at the University of California. I had some incredible experiences, which could be called mind over matter or higher consciousness. And this led me to experience what I will call the other side, something beyond the scientific three-dimensional paradigm. This led me into associations with some very gifted scientists, including Elizabeth Rauscher, who worked at Stanford Research Institute with Russell Targ and Harold Pudoff, published more than 450 scientific papers, and became one of my colleagues. We recently published a massive book dealing with mind over matter. And that added to our collection has led us to the more recent book called Intergalactic Space Law, because if you have all this information and you can't run with it, it simply sits on the shelf. So we are reaching the galactic frontier, and Desiree has some very important insights as to why this book is so important.
Right. Well, I know we want to start with a little bit of a meditation if we can do that, but you're holding up, of course, the walkie-talkies. And I think it's really interesting because one of the questions, the survey question, is about the Breakthrough Listening Project that was looking for signals at what is now known as the nearest sun to our own sun, and that is Proxima Centauri. So let's maybe tune into that kind of energy, because we think that there is intelligence, and we can talk more about that, why we think there is intelligence on Alpha Centauri, Beta Centauri, and Proxima Centauri. It's like a triple star system. And it's because a good friend of ours actually was taken there. So that's really far out, right? But let's tune in if we can for a few minutes to start out with these stars around us, and know we can remote view wherever we want. In fact, we know that Ingo Swann, who is really one of the pioneers at SRI, the Stanford Research Institute remote viewing project, actually remote viewed Jupiter. And we'll talk about that as well. And he saw everything that then NASA came and talked about. It's amazing.
Before NASA came with its technology, he was there with the power of the mind.
So let's remote view to some of these neighboring planets, including Mars, even the moon, if you don't want to go too far away.
Let us feel the universe as a cosmic mind, and let us feel the inner, shall we say, mind's eye reaching out as a blue-green laser into space. Let us feel the vastness of the universe, the cosmos, that is inviting us to rediscover that we're not alone. Let us also feel that each of us can bring together intention of the mind and extension of the mind reach to go to these distant planets, solar systems, and realize this amazing universe that we're all a part of.
So first of all, let us also encircle our planet, because we need that energy from you to help heal our planet. We feel you can actually do not only remote viewing, but also remote healing. And we've had friends, actually, Elizabeth Targ, who was the daughter of Russell Targ, who worked very strongly with remote healing. So feel yourself healing the planet, and then move out and see yourself in outer space. Look at the work of what's taking place right now on Mars, as the rover Perseverance is actually going around this beautiful planet, looking at the mountainous regions that are there. And then go a little further out, even to Jupiter, with its many satellites around it, and even to Saturn, a beautiful, beautiful planetary system that also has many satellites, many moons around it. And let's join also the Voyager probes. I think some of you are familiar with the Voyager probe. It goes back 44 years ago, and now it's in interstellar space. It's gone out from the Oort cloud. It's gone out of what's legally considered our solar system into interstellar space, our first human probe. Be with it, see it, experience it.
This is our home. This is our universe. And we're now taking our baby steps. And as we do, like the astronauts looking back at a little blue-green planet, we realize what is called by astronaut Mitchell, the overview effect. As we look back, we see how small our planet is, how we're all together as a humanity, and how precious this time is to grow up and to realize we have got cosmic cousins, friends, neighbors, what the ancient indigenous elders and spiritual philosophers recognize as the higher angelic realms. Some would call the realms of the avatars, the cosmic beings. We would simply call them the cosmic others, who now are at our doorstep. And with the sense of love, compassion, and deep open-mindedness, they come together as we begin a new voyage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful opening. I wanted to ask you, now you guys have been in consciousness research for 49 years. And one of the things you did, you were concerned about the war in the Middle East in 1975, so much so that you brought a bunch of scientists together and you led a massive remote viewing program that ran for 3 months with 12 remote viewers at all times, scheduled every 3 hours to do an hour of massive serious meditation, to remote view, to look at different places, to see what was happening, to also calm things down. And the study said that you guys might have reached a 72% effectiveness. What was it like running that program?
Well, at first it seemed too idealistic for some, but given the fact that Henry Kissinger at that time had failed diplomacy,
Right.
people were looking at the possibility of World War III. And there was actually 2 advisors to the late President Kennedy that joined us in this unique psychological / spiritual meditation outreach. Our minds were brought together like a television screen. We all were using what I will call a higher energy sense of sacred vibrations or mantras to build the energy throughout our body, throughout our heart, and then we link together as a collective mind, a collective I. As we looked into the Middle East, we could actually discern that there were, should we say, elements that wanted to blow up military facilities, and we had the option to simply let this pass by or alert those individuals in the Middle East that there would be events that could be, so we say, rebalanced by the power of the higher mind.
Right. So we weren't working alone with this. We were actually at the home of Alexandre Ditrrich, who's really well known. He actually brought Uri Geller to this country back in those days, and he worked very closely also with astronaut Edgar Mitchell.
He's the unknown Tesla of his time.
But also we had someone who you may know, Zenka, Fred Alan Wolf. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He's like a quantum physicist. He's a little bit retired now because this is years ago. Of course, I was 2 when we were doing this. But anyway, I'm just saying. But bottom line, he is an amazing quantum physicist. So he also understood this entanglement and non-local reality. And that was part of his whole nature. We also had some other interesting people. Someone had worked with one of the top satellite systems, and he was visualizing literally going into, because he knew rockets, he knew satellites, going into a I should say, yeah, a type of weapon system satellite and actually neutralizing the system itself.
Like slowly turning the wheels on the side of the rocket in the other direction. So first of all, you had to have people that had competence in the field of mind extension. You had to have those who had some background in psychology and science to know that mind over matter does work when you bring the right people together. And of course, there's always the situation of coincidence that things may happen. We write about this in a book, Mind Dynamics, which you have a copy of. But essentially, we were told that we had to save situations that would have been horrendous and destructive in the, so we say, the starting of events that could have led to World War III.
And blowing up the pyramids. You guys stopped
Another
a
event
bomb
was
attack.
that Islamic terrorists wanted to blow up the Great Pyramid of Egypt. They considered it to be anti-theology according to their belief system. And we actually saw psychically those that were carrying sticks of dynamite and were able to intercede and prevent that. So the countermeasures do work, both in practical application of archaeology and medicine, but also in defensive sociology, where you see events coming that you can prevent. And of course, Desiree and I could talk a lot about weather storms and things that the indigenous knew about and how they could do the rain dance and bring rain and how they could slightly alter certain weather conditions.
I just want to say, we're here in Sedona, and some of you may remember that in the summertime, there was a major fire coming nearby.
Yeah.
And I know some people were getting really paranoid. Should we pack our bags? What should we do? We said, no, we should, pray for the rains, pray for a change of environment. Let's just put that energy together. And we're not the only ones. I'm sure many people around Sedona did this. And so what exactly happened? The fire was put out, then the monsoons, and we had 2 years of no monsoons, came back. So we really are not really able to say we can't help. We can help in every capacity. You said, let's do it. That's exactly, when you know something's wrong, something's not happening, do it.
It's called reducing theory to practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much, but a handful of good people with compassion and positive thinking can do wonders. And that's really the bottom line. We're not looking for big situations. We're looking for appropriate situations where we can take the message and the meaning of parapsychology and what we would call, or what Fred Alan Wolf called the spiritual universe, and link that up with the physical universe.
Yeah, so I just want to remind everyone that Exo Metaverse and LightNet, we are supporting programmatically with Greg Heller and Daniel Reshkan and Celia, the Fire in the Grid, which is going to be 22 million people on January 15th, being an hour in joy, right? So this is, you know, if we can get that many people together, we really can dent space-time. Now, I just want to show this, you know, in this mind dynamics in space, this is their chapter where they talk about an experiment. Again, we're just try it, right? This is an experiment they did. These guys, the Hurtalks, gallivanted over to Egypt and other places, and they had their friend, didn't even, you know, they told her when they were going, and she would draw stuff and they would take pictures. This is what she remote viewed. I mean, it's exactly
She
the
was
picture.
in Phoenix, so that was
Six-
many
six-
thousands of
5,000 to 6,000 kilometers
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
She was able to mentally pick up detail.
And there's pages and pages of these things where they're matching. She's matching exactly. Look at this.
Where we were.
These are the
yeah.
columns, the arches right there, the bushes. I mean, it's like, so this
Yeah,
is,
she was good.
we can no longer deny the fact that you are not your bodies, right? We can get out of our bodies. We can see things, do things, heal things, right? With our hearts, right?
I even
So-
said about Elizabeth Rauscher, because she was older at, you know, the time we wrote the book, she used to remote view the food store. So you can remote view anything, especially lost keys. I have a great friend who you can call anytime, he'll tell you where your keys are. So, I mean, you know,
My
let's just
friend
use it.
remote views read. She's like, pick the third one. I'm like, are you serious?
I know,
So we
it's
have built
amazing.
into our mind other things we not normally take advantage of, because we were told only to exercise or use one side of the brain, either the scientific side or that we will call the artistic, metaphysical. In actuality, our work has been to bring both together. And when you bring both together, you have this immense field of information that you can choose from. The bottom line, of course, is the constructive use of this. And in the context of our discussion tonight, is reaching out as a citizen diplomat, if and when the so-called extraterrestrials or cosmic others come to our doorstep, to make wise and humanistic choices so that we can be in alignment with our traditions of culture, our traditions of positive thinking, and also the resources of the future that we can profit from.
And I want to say one of the reasons that remote viewing is so important is not only because it helps us understand who we cosmically are, which is really beings that can span the universe, and even I consider the universal mind the multidimensional aspects, but also, as we know from Alan Steinfeld, who's broadcasting this now, his new book, Making Contact, that basically the alien intelligences, the ETs, actually also use remote viewing, and they're also connected in a quantum level. They're entangled with us. And that's one of the things that Alan comes out with about how if someone has just seen a UFO, you don't even have to have a ET standing in the midst of you. There's a consciousness connection. And we are, one of the interesting things that they came out with at Stanford Research Institute is the fact that you didn't like sit here in California or Arizona and then travel with your mind over to Russia to see what the Kremlin was all about. You were at the Kremlin. There was no time delay. That is the experiment that Russell Chard and Elizabeth Rauscher also did. They measured the time to be able to get there. It was almost instantaneously, faster than the speed of light. So you are there. You are on the moon if you wish to be on the moon. We have that capability, and the aliens do as well.
Yeah. So what, so let's talk about what you guys well, let's talk about the practicality of remote viewing and also like what enhances. I mean, I know we have Faraday cages. Well, nobody has a Faraday cage in their house. So
Oh,
is it-
Andrea Buhr had one.
yeah, right. So does Adrian.
But he had the maybe,
Who's here right now.
There's a few people in
So
that.
is this mostly about our hearts, or is it mostly about quieting the rest? Is it about doing it at 4 a.m, the
You know what I
electromagnetics are not
say?
as strong?
It's really about knowing you can do it. That's the first breakthrough. And I often tell people, look at your cell phone or don't look at it when someone's calling you, and just think who's calling you. You start training your mind. Once you start realizing, hey, I know who's calling before I even look, then you start using it in other capabilities and you start just developing and developing. One of the things that Russell Targ said is anybody can do it. They're picking people from down the corridor, people who never even
At Stanford.
Yeah, at Stanford Research Institute. No, they didn't even think they could ever do it, but they showed them, they trained them a little bit because you want to be able to have some training, and then they were fabulous.
historically, it was in the monastic communities, either the Buddhistic or the Hinduistic or the early Christian, that people would get together and galvanize their energy. We would call it a symphonic synergy, where people working together could create this spark of higher cooperation. And that seemed to work together just like musicians working together, improvising music. In essence, we are musical biotransducers. Our body is set up to receive and send signals. And one of the things that I wrote about in my book, The Keys of Enoch, is that we're going to find out that gravitational waves work also with the human mind. And we're in an age of, shall we say, not only scientifically proving that we are working at all times, not only with gravitational fields, but with gravitational waves. And that's the key to future communication beyond physical technology. We just have to quiet the mind. We have to be able to energize the big picture, which means we have to see the picture of the universe that we're in through sound, through color, through sacred geometry. These are factors we teach in what we will call musical linguistics. Why? Because the body is basically pacified by the rush of society, the misinformation of the media, to retreat and to think, shall we say, in a passive, negative way. The brilliance of life in the universe and within ourselves is to realize we're interconnected. We are broadcasting the divine and the loving undercurrent that connects all life in the universe.
And we really can do this. So once you know you can do it, then of course there's some training programs. One of the first things you'll find out is sketch down the first thing that comes to your mind. And the important thing is not to have an intellectual overlay. Now, one of the things that Uri Geller did at SRI, he had like 2 circles and a couple lines with it. He didn't understand what the 2 circles were with the lines. Turned out to be a pair of glasses, but he understood what he was seeing and he was able to draw it that way. It's amazing. So the whole idea is just draw it. Just make the drawing that you think is coming into your mind, and don't even try to figure it out what it is. And eventually you'll start realizing your mind is there. Your mind can pick up on unusual things. In fact, an interesting thing I want to plug actually is called Third Eye Spies. It's available on Prime, Amazon Prime, and it's Russell Targ's last film. And he talks about a very interesting thing. They were trying to get money, especially from the CIA, and they weren't getting it. They didn't know, like, oh, how are we going to do it? So they had one contact, Kit Green, in the CIA. And so he said, well, like, just, Russell and Hal Puthoff, the main people, said, well, give me some coordinates and we'll tell you what's there. So actually, Kit went down the hall and got from one guy, and he gave him coordinates of his cabin in the middle of like Virginia, West Virginia, in the border area there. So basically they gave it back to the guys, and they started seeing these dishes and these amazing like government buildings, and they went down and they got into the file cabinets. This isn't even remote viewing.
NSA.
And that of NSA. And what happened, and this is what's interesting, oftentimes a remote viewer can see things that the person even like standing there doesn't see because he can get in. And they got the names of the top secret programs. So they took it back to Kit, and Kit goes, well, took it to his friend. He goes, well, it's my cabin. I mean, I just gave him my cabin. What do you mean, And so Kit drove there, and then he realized just about a half a mile away was this top secret. CIA didn't even know about it. NSA listening for the Russians. This is back in the 70s, right? And they got like ultimately $2 to $6 million, depending on the time, for what they
So
were
they
able to
beat the
read.
spies.
Yeah, they beat
The
the
psychic spies
Wow.
beat the military spies.
all the way into the
But
file cabinets. With
Let's cut to
secret
the chase.
names.
The easy thing that you can do is train yourself with your cell phone. When you get a call coming in without looking at the name, think of who's on that cell phone on the other side. Train your mind to be sensitive and recognize that we're part of a global mind. We are part of a global picture. We are all interconnected because the same elements that went into our body went also into everybody else's body. And there are filter mechanisms and the energy thresholds. In the Eastern tradition, they were called chakras. In the early Christian mystical tradition, they were called the 7 seals, or these energy points. And if you can begin to superimpose a mind map around your body and think of your chakras, like what the Tibetans would call, or even the Hopis here in Sedona would call, a rainbow bridge, begin to travel this bridge upwards and begin to understand the circulatory pattern that connects all of you, not only one side of the brain that's male, but the other side that's female. One part of you that's east, one part of you that's west. One part of you that's within the microcosmos and one part's in the macrocosmos. Obviously, this takes some time, but then the idea is to have a positive application where you can use this to send positive energy to someone who needs your love or help or psychological support, or better yet, to some part of Africa or Asia where the situation of COVID-19 is driving people up the wall, that they need a sense of reciprocity from the positive rather than the negative thinking.
And I want to say, in terms of going in and out into outer space, again, I mentioned Ingo Swann was able to actually, with Harold Sherman, the two of them actually did this report. You can find it actually on the internet. So what he saw when he went to Jupiter was he saw that the atmosphere had like crystalline particles. He also saw some like vague aspects of a ring system, which we didn't even know existed, but they later found exactly those two functions. And they also saw some other amazing things. So then when I think Voyager was going by, it picked up exactly what Ingo saw. So that's one other aspect. But I just want to say that being here in Sedona, a lot of people tap into other realities. And I think when you're tapping into those other realities, that's also remote viewing. You can get information from an unlimited, multidimensional aspect of life. And I think that is extremely important. We're not limited to the globe. We're not limited to the solar system. We're not limited to the whole universe. Think about it. The information that you can gain if you do a mind reach, as Russell calls it.
So, you know, you guys were doing this heavy duty 3-month remote viewing experiences in 75. The government releases information in the 95, 20 years later that they've been doing remote research. So we obviously know that there's a lot that they're not talking about, and they're starting to talk about it because it's like the world with all this Star Trek and all these movies, like the kids want aliens, you know, we all want to experience this galactic narrative. So we talk a lot about what do we actually want to happen. So from people like you guys who've been in this your entire lives, what would you want to happen in the next 5 years? If everything, if everyday people could drive the reality that you would love to see, what would it look like?
Well, we'd like to see a positive future.
Yes, exactly. So why don't we say we want to first see a peaceful world, a peaceful planet. I think that's number one. And then we believe once we've seen that or established that peaceful planet, we will ultimately have contact with other levels of intelligence, because from what we know now, and this is something that Chaim Eshed said he's from the Israeli Security Space Program, that the ETs don't think we're ready. And I believe that is actually on some levels true. Of course, we do feel we're ready on a personal level, but if you go back, the New York Times said out of the last 3,400 years of history, only less than 270 years of that have been a peaceful planet. So really, we're not the kind of people you want to have like visiting you on outer
And
space.
Chaim, whom you quote, said that in the Jerusalem Post in December 2020, but he was replying to questions regarding things on Mars. And in my book, which you show the audience, The Keys of Enoch.
Yeah, right here.
You have it there. I, in 1973, had a vision of structures on Mars and
you wanna
actually
find-
saw evidences of a previous civilization that was destroyed. As nerve-wracking as it was, I pointed this out to my colleagues at NASA, and later when the Mariner 9 and other probes went there to confirm what I psychically saw or spiritually saw, I'm using this word as interchangeable, I asked for permission to receive these pictures to prove that there was a higher contact of scientific prediction and reality. What we're seeing here is this one of many important diagrams and pictures in the Keys of Enoch that show that the world and the larger universe has gone through some very unusual events. And we are looking now at the possibility that there was once a civilization of Mars that destroyed itself. And that reminds us that we're close to what the United Nations feels could happen on this planet if we're not alert enough to take considerations of what Mother Nature is telling us. Since 1970, 70% of the animals in our planet have disappeared.
Well, actually, the insects, I think in particular.
In the insects in Europe, but no, according to Bruce Lipton and others,
And Guy McPherson.
Guy McPherson, that's upwards of mammals that have disappeared. And so we're looking at experts behind the scenes who realize that we're pushing the envelope towards planetary collapse if we're not careful. And it could very well be that what we're seeing coming from the other areas of our local universe are those life forms that want to warn us against this technical move towards self-destruction.
Right, and that self-destruction is both environmental as well as, because the more environmental pressures we put upon ourselves, and I used to teach this actually at the university, the more you start having more violent reactions from other countries trying to control and trying to get the last of the resources and everything like that. So it's not just, oh, we're going to have hot days. I mean, when there's a lack of food and maybe earthquakes that are taking place for certain areas of the planet, you're going to have more and more chaos. So what do we want to see for the future? A better future, that we care for the environment. I mean, we think we were actually given to this planet to be the caretakers of the animals and of the environment, and we have not done a good job.
And we've had the opportunity to work privately with several of the astronauts who've seen foreign technologies in outer space, who will acknowledge that there are other galactic civilizations, theoretically, on our doorstep. And we feel that the time has come to begin to forge seriously a galactic space law and intergalactic diplomacy, so that if these things should drop in from outer space, we'll not be afraid of what's out there, but we'll understand that this is part of the greater evolutionary curve. Evolution doesn't stop with Mother Earth, it continues. We're just one of many manifestations. So regardless of the percentages of what certain UN committees say or what certain futurists say about who's on first base, we have to realize we're on all bases. Life out there in space is part of life here on our inner levels of space. We are moving towards conversion, and it doesn't surprise me that some of the major players in the space war of, quote unquote, navigating outer space will come to the fore in the next 2 or 3 years and put the cards on the table. Namely, one, we're not alone in the universe. Two, the extraterrestrials, as we call them, not of this planet, are working behind the scenes and helping us with ideas from remote thinking or ESP. Three, we have opportunities to reinvent ourselves with a new cosmology that's more flexible and positive. And four, we have to grow up and not see everything in fear and doubt, but recognize this is well within the indigenous heritage, as well as within our biblical heritage, that there are higher levels of cosmic intelligence, and that's part of our learning experience on Schoolhouse Mother Earth, quote unquote.
You talk about how you feel that these other intelligences are supporting our own evolution here. In the movie Immortals that was just released, they talk about, like seeding inventions literally for people to do it. And I know there's 200 free energy devices waiting for patents right now. It's
Wow.
like, really?
Now, we knew someone, actually, we lived also in Silicon Valley and San Jose area, and we knew someone that actually at night would get communication, and then he went to work in his daily job, he was working for a company where he could implement some of that information. And I think that's part of that remote viewing and really remote hearing, if I can say that. All of us have that potential. And I think more and more people are using it to tune into those other levels of intelligence that really know more than we do. I have to say, we are kind of boxed here. We can get outside the box, and we can also get feedback from some of these intelligences that are giving us that information that can help humanity. I think they're really trying to help humanity. They're trying it in environmental ways. Like take a look at Fukushima. There's been ET vehicles seen flying around Fukushima. You can Google that, in many other situations. Even volcanoes like the one near Puebla, Mexico. A friend of ours, Jaime Malsan, actually takes pictures because they're always going in and out and around that volcano to kind of protect, I think, the planet for a while. People are saying the same thing for meteorites. So the people on the other side, the ETs, I can say, are trying to help us on those levels, but also they're feeding us information absolutely to try to help us here. But we got to get the right ones, because we do think it's a variety. We say, just like people on this planet, the majority of people are great. You want to be with them. You want to share with them. There's also a small percentage that really want to take advantage as well.
Are self-serving and are more towards the negative use of technology. So positive engagement and contact will be the cosmic jackpot. We will grow up quickly. Everything we know in the realm of science, education, and spiritual philosophy will change. We will understand that we are one species, one human being, and we'll begin to gradually, shall we say, build cities in space and recognize that we were meant to explore the universe and not simply be, quote unquote, landlubbers on a three-dimensional planet. So this is the time of reckoning. It's the time when all the cards are being put on the table, so to speak, from the various countries of the world that we have been in and lectured at. And also it's the time when good material is coming forth. I want to put a plug in for this book, Leap of Faith, by astronaut Gordy Cooper, one of the 7 pioneers into outer space.
We knew Gordy because we did a book called Doomsday Conspiracy, and he was one of our consultants on that. That was a book by Sidney Sheldon.
And I want to read just a few words from this book published in the year 2000 to give an idea that we're looking at a real science of universal intelligence, not a crackpot science of UFO speculation. These are heavy-duty astronauts that we work with. He writes, the first American president to answer a question at an official press conference about UFOs following a rash of public sightings, President Harry Truman said on April 4th, 1950, quote, I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not constructed by any power on earth, end of quote.
Quote unquote from a president.
Wow.
Now that wasn't really.
So we have worked
public.
with him. Desiree and I have seen evidences from leading researchers throughout the world, and we've had our own personal experiences with what I will call ultra-terrestrial life forms, which are what, Desiree?
Which are really light beings. And we believe that our vibratory frequencies can also resonate with the light beings. Some people call them angelic powers. They're not just angels like we give them names. They're literally beings that don't need a physical material body.
So we see this a lot in Eastern art and indigenous art. Besides the extraterrestrials, which we classify as working with physical technology in the third dimension and beyond, ultra-terrestrial forms that do not need technology, they are beyond evolution, as we call it. But they're really the higher minds of the universe that are behind the scenes that are bringing us into a deeper understanding that there is a spark of life that brings us together into a new frontier of possibilities.
But if I can go back for a minute, you were holding up your walkie-talkies, and I did want to talk about that breakthrough listening project that did get signals from Proxima Centauri. Of course, the big question is on those signals is many people said, oh, it's just like feedback resonance from the Earth. Well, Apollo 10, that's right before the first moon landing, Apollo 11, but Apollo 10, which was Cernan, Young, and one other astronaut, when they got to the backside of the moon, they actually heard sounds in space. And so people didn't really understand that too much. I mean, where are these sounds coming from? So there's a lot of cover up going on. But let me go back, and the same thing with this breakthrough listening project, you always come up with some reason why it's not what it was. What they said about Apollo 10 and the sounds of music, they said it was the 2 spacecraft that we had up there that were doing feedback back from one another. And, the astronauts never said a word after that. But the same thing here, many people are saying this Proxima Centauri signals are just Earth resonances. They're not really coming from there. Now, why do we think it's interesting? And they could be coming from there because we had a very good friend in South Africa in the Drakensberg region, which to us is a very key region, almost like Sedona is here. It's high mountains. It was actually used at the end of the movie 2012 for where the arcs were going to go to. But she had contact with an alien intelligence. Her name was Elizabeth Clark. And they said that they were one time living on this planet, even living underneath the Antarctic. But that our planet, which is very interesting, was getting too much solar flares from the sun, and they were forced to leave. Yeah, Dr. Tech's going to hold up
My
a
new
small
book, it's a picture,
of
if you can train the camera where my finger is, you'll see Elizabeth, Madam Clara, yours truly, and then the picture, Akon, who was the space commander that landed in Drakensberg.
So he said he went to the nearest star. Now, this experience took place in the 50s. We thought Bernard star and some other stars were probably the closest stars to us. But he said, no, Centauri is the closest star system. And that's exactly where she was taken. She was taken to Alpha Centauri. Her book is called Beyond the Light Barrier. It's actually, you can probably Google yourself a copy. So it's very, very interesting. And she was talking about how our sun system is a variable star. Now, she actually published this, even though she talked many times about her experience before that. She published it in the 80s. Dr. Hurtalk's book was in the 70s. And it said, our sun is a variable star. That means that it goes into solar minimums and solar maximums. And we do have to be careful because we're moving into solar maximum right now. But she said that Centauri was not a variable star. It was very stable because of the 3 suns that are connected with that. So it's interesting that, she went there, she saw his house. She said it was beautiful. They pretty much floated, which is common for extraterrestrials. They don't always walk on the ground. In fact, it's harder for them to walk on the ground than, they rather float and fly around. And she just described it. And now we're getting signals from there. So I think they're real.
We became friends because the planet she was talking to was called Metone, and Metone is mentioned in the Keys of Enoch. I did not know that when I wrote that in 1973. I was able to see into the, shall we say, the greater cosmos and identify certain planets. We would call them exoplanets, like ourselves, where there was life like our own human race. And when she found out that I had mentioned the planet that she had gone to, and I had found out that she went in that area that I had already speculated on and wrote about, we became best of friends. And so she allowed Desiree to take pictures of some of these very rare pictures of her contact story. And I just want to say as a footnote, she was laughed at in the United States, considered crazy. But West German, even Russian scientists saw her privately, wanted to look at her log books because she was a member of the British intelligence. She knew how to take good logs. And she had perfectly described mathematical formulas that she could not think about that dealt with the curvature of the Earth and also going beyond timelines as we define it. So we have a precious material in this book, as well as in the Keys of Enoch, which mentions also the timeline of 2004, which happened to be the time that our Pentagon has now selected to release the most important films of all time. So again, the Keys of Enoch have been accurate in all the basic timelines, in spite of critics who say, oh, you said this, you said that. No, I didn't say that. I wrote about this in code. It was not to be taken literally, but taken metaphorically as a larger shift of consciousness. The key here is we have to have higher consciousness to engage with the cosmic others. We must connect and make a contact within ourselves. We must take the positive resources of our mind and heart and put them together.
So I want to pause here for a second because we're going to go into breakout groups right now. So in other words, if you're live on Alan's New Realities, you can get into the Zoom. And what we're going to do is we're going to put everybody that wants to go into breakout groups of 4 people. You're going to have 20 minutes. You're going to set a timekeeper and have that person give each person about 5 minutes. This is your chance to talk about your contact experience with each other or ask for support or help in your life. Or you can talk about your experiences with astral travel or remote viewing. So Again, Ben's going to set up the breakout groups right now. If you do not want to go into the breakout group, do not accept that invitation. Stay in the main channel with us, where we will continue the interview. We're going to talk about their contact experiences as well. So if again, so we're going to go ahead and open the breakout groups now. It's funny because, when we set up this question with Desiree, what do you think the signals from Proxima Centaurus reported in October were? And the mainstream press put it was a mistaken Earth signal. They were saying like, there's got to be some explanation. It was, and only 5% of the people that filled out this survey thought that, and everyone was thinking, right. So it's really, it's like, this news whole, like, we're just going to say whatever is not working anymore because the internet is alive and well. We've got 66% believing that it was an extra dimensional signal communication. The collective consciousness wanted to have a contact experience, and it's being created in our reality. 40% believe that. Extraterrestrials, 38%. The other thing that was really interesting, we asked what we thought, what people thought was on Mars and what people thought is on the moon, and one of the options was nothing but craters. Nobody, there was 0% selection on that, and people, 75% believe that, and 60% believe that there could be ET bases on Mars and the moon, possibly human bases, 50%. Chinese spacecraft, 37%, future human bases, 31%. So,
let me just say something in terms of the Proxima Centauri. Actually, the intelligences, I want to make it clear that Elizabeth Clark thought were very akin to ourselves. Now, we do believe in, the reptilians, the insectoids, all the different types of species, the grays, but the ones on Proxima Centauri are very much like ourselves. So that's what
could be future humans.
Yes,
Very interesting.
Well, they supposedly had lived on
A breakaway
this planet.
civilization is the technical term. They who were here before, because of solar irregularities, they decided
They had to leave.
they had to leave.
Yeah, and so they got.
And so
to
we are
Venus.
finding their bases, quote unquote.
But in terms of the other question, which was, one of the things that gets me with people's, understanding is the Campeche. This was a place in Mexico where in 2004, very much like the Nimitz experience, there were literally in a video, at least 8, some people say 13, and ultimately in the full video, there was actually more than 100 vehicles seen.
100 light ships.
They have not released that information, but the cover up is to say, oh, they were oil wells in the Gulf of Campeche, right? These guys who took the pictures, first of all, it's forward-looking infrared, which means it's all data. They are the people that monitor the drug runners. They know what's in the sky and they know what's on the ground. And they're trying to tell people that what they were shooting was on the ground. It even has an altitude of where the pictures are. But people buy it. You go out there and you say, well, what about the Campeche? Oh, those are just oil wells. So you really, really have to start understanding.
And these spaceships, these little spheres, were more than 30 stories high, each one of them.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. So, there's a lot that's seen. In fact, 2004, right? The Nimitz that took place off of the coast of Santa Catarina in California. Well, same time, similar to that, 2004, there was also a flotilla over Guadalajara, Mexico. So there's been many different events on 2004. And Dr. Hurtalk, in his book, said 2004 was the really breaking point for humanity.
The watermark.
Yeah, the watermark for starting to realize that we are not alone in the universe. And of course, 2004 came and went, although people had known about these other situations, it never made front page news, but now it is. Now we're starting to realize that. And you were asking about what was Dr. Hurtalk's experience. Well, it wasn't an extraterrestrial. It was what we call an ultra-terrestrial. And so we did write a chapter in Alan Steinfeld's Making Contact book, chapter 3. And it talks about the extraterrestrials, one level of intelligence, a little bit more advanced than we.
Humans, extraterrestrials, and then ultra-terrestrials.
Yeah, well, we also put in celestials, extra celestials, which some people like Mark Sims, I know he's a good friend of yours. Actually, he even said it's I contacted a celestial. That's what the guy told him to say. I'm a celestial. And we said, well, we call them extra celestials, but pretty much the same term. And then what Dr. Jack experienced was an ultra-terrestrial. Those are the ones not in body form, not needing spaceships, but still in his experience. He saw the many levels, and I was with him shortly after that, and there were many light ships that were connected, because even if you have light beings up there, they're also connected with us, but they're also connected with certain extraterrestrial civilizations as well. I mean, it's one big, universe that we're all sharing in.
So we need a new textbook of evolution. We need to redefine what is scientific truth. We have to re-examine human civilization and realize we're all connected. And finally, we have to realize the potential of the mind. Historically, it was called the gifts of the divine or Holy Spirit. In the East, it was called the greater gifts and the empowerments of the divine in the human form. We have to come together and realize that we are going to take a great leap when this cosmic change hits us. And it's a question of, are we prepared? Do we need a better sociology and psychology and better use really of the musical drama that we think about, which is speaking in our heart? Hey, it's time to wake up. And so all of this comes together, and thankful someone like you brings us together so we can broadcast and tell each one of us we have options. We can sit on the sidelines and watch the world slowly go into somersaults, or we can work for a positive change.
If I can just say, one of the things I wrote about in this book, in our chapter, three of us, that there was an encounter a girlfriend of mine had. She was an underwater diver off the coast of Florida, and she had contact in the Bermuda Triangle with alien intelligence. And they told her many, many things, some of which she could say and some she couldn't say. But when she was sitting in, a friend of ours who was a lawyer was just like drilling her. You know how those lawyers can get you to say anything. So they were drilling her, and all of a sudden a shelf flew up, not even down, and it was in a kitchen, flew up with stuff all over the place. She goes, I can't say anymore. And it just shows, and that's why it's so important to say this, that the connectedness that we have with other levels of intelligence. We are literally all interconnected, and the consciousness linkage, if you've made contact, is still there. Mothers know this about their kids, but ETs also have that connection to us as well. And if you want contact, we would suggest, of course, the highest levels of reality, but contact is available for many people. Just have to understand it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the remote viewing thing. It's believing and wanting and asking and intending and showing up and being open and being relaxed and enjoying it, right? So it's, we're going to interview Rob Friedman, who's gone all over the world, interviewed people of all different cultures. And he's like, it couldn't be more simple. I mean, we could do all this hocus pocus, but it's really just your heart. And it's really just asking for that experience. And then once you're able to process it, then you're going to have the next one and the next one and the next one. And one of the things we're going to really focus on in LightNet and Exo Metaverse is to really get people to experience their first contact experience. And it can be done through meditation. It can be done through dreams. It can be done through CE5. It can be done in all these different ways. So let's talk for a little bit about your experience with ultra dimensionals and how it was for you, and how the shock of it was afterwards, or how, did you ask for it? Did it just come? Like how did you prepare yourself? How has it impacted your life? Like, talk about it a little bit.
Yes, well, I had deep interest in philosophy and all aspects of science. I read every book. I became deeply involved with academics at a very early age. I was teaching at the university at the age of 28, and I felt I could not explain adequately to my students in Eastern philosophy and other subjects that there were higher realms of these so-called angelic forms that you find in classical literature. Whether you're looking at this in the mystical traditions of the ancient Near East or the sutra texts of Japan, China, and the Far East, you run into the recognition that there were beings of the diamond vehicle, beings of higher intelligence that were there in previous cycles of time. And so I began to put together teaching that I had received from the various traditions in the musical context of linguistics, and having some musical talent to compose. I began to read and to recite mantras, but adding the divine names or the spiritual expressions of law of light, something that Dr. Emoto did years later in Japan.
So
Yes.
intention plus sound, if we can say
And these
that,
were
yeah.
named, the biblical names I used were from the Hebrew, the Aramaic, Greek, the Coptic, and then some of the Sanskrit. Later, I began to see that there were patterns that I gravitated to, and using these sound structures, I had a experience where a morphogenic door opened and a being of light manifested.
And he asked, actually, are you ready? Because that's
I was
important.
asked
It's not
politely,
an
am I
abduction,
ready?
and you
Because
gotta
my
say that,
request
Stuart.
was, is there a higher spiritual existence to life? Is there a higher realm of intelligence that is behind the ups and downs of human civilization? Because I did not see logic at work in all of the intellectual histories that I had studied. I saw a history of war, of violence, of destruction, but then I saw there were various periods of time when great thinkers would step forth, people like Michelangelo, people in the ancient Far East that had magnificent pictures of celestial realms.
Yeah, it's even known the avatars are said to come in the Hindu tradition and the Sanskrit whenever we really need help. So we do believe that
It was
those
intense
energies are
prayer
present.
and a sense of devotion and humility that if I had such an experience, then I would go and tell the world for the rest of my life. The divine
We did, yeah.
existence is possible and that we're all connected with a higher family, that we would call a family of divinities, a family of the super angelic.
So he really went into these higher realms. He was taken in his physical body and then ultimately in a light body connected with Enoch and ultimately Metatron. And then he came back and started writing. I was a student at the time, as well as many other students. He had several classes he was teaching. And he started, teaching some of this information. But we also started going outside at night, doing not quite CE5s, because that's the term that's used, but seeing light ships and energies.
Well, it's interesting that I received information regarding Mars and I co-authored papers, scientific papers for the space program, space law, and how we had to respect the water resources on our sister planets and other areas of genetics and our archaeology, where actually was shown one of our new books is called the Giza's Industrial Complex, where the Tomb of Osiris would be found. And we were able to find it through the use of vibrations.
Right.
Montrake-like sound patterns with attached to ground penetrating radar. So even though the Egyptian authorities took over our finding and made it their own, Dr. Hawass was kind enough to allow us to explore, and we were the ones who first made significant use of finding the lost Tomb of Osiris.
So I have to say there were actually 64 areas of science that Dr. Jack was told about. We're going to make a quantum
From
leap
archaeology to cosmology,
because we were going to be having contact.
and all would come together.
They didn't want us if we were just, primitive guys, driving around in, four-wheel drive cars or something. They needed us to advance to understand who we were a lot more.
Because we were killing ourselves with plastic civilization. We had to advance, but we have to come to the heart, because the heart is just as powerful as the mind. Our heart is our tabernacle. So if we go into meditation, at least for 1 to 2 hours a day, and go into our inner heart, our tabernacle, our vessel, our vehicle, and begin to super invoke the sacred expressions, regardless of what sacred tradition, we find that the Hebrew Aramaic for this cycle of time works the best, is the most powerful. We begin to send energy through our body, and suddenly we realize we can jump from this side of our brain, what we call the synaptic gap, into a higher overself mind that is not there physically, but is there etherically as the energy field
And I
of
know-
existence.
We're going to try that, right? Is it time?
Yeah,
or
it's
should
not
we-
quite time yet.
Okay.
I want everybody that's here in the audience to be thinking of questions. We have about 25 minutes left or half an hour left. We're going to bring people back from the breakout groups in a moment, and then we're going to open it up to questions and sharing. Wow, so 1 to 2 hours a day. So I'm super, okay, so when Adrian and I went to mystery school and they did psychic surgery on us and they did all this stuff, they were constantly playing your CDs.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like in the bookshelf, like, I was like,
Where's
okay,
that?
find this and find this and find this. Just like, well, okay, go
I
ahead.
just want to say that the reason why it's important, of course, the music does put you at ease. It gives you that relaxation, gives you that attunement as well. But why it's important, we would say, he says 1 or 2 hours a day. You can even do a half hour, an hour in the morning, and a half hour, an hour at night, which isn't that long. Because also with all the 5G and everything else going on, it helps realign your body. We're connected. One of the things the Keys of Enoch talk about is axial tonal lines. Some of you may be familiar with that from Eric Pearl. He actually was reading the keys when he got that information, and he wrote about it in his book. And the idea is that you're going to start realigning your physical body to what we consider your overself or energy body. Your energy body is perfect. It's in harmony. It's, beautiful, and it resonates. But when you live here, you eat too much, or you're exposed to too many, cell phone radiations, you need to restore yourself. And you can only really do that by aligning yourself through meditation, through calming, through allowing that energy to flow through you. So I think it's beautiful that, you were able to learn that, but also that people do it.
Well, and this concept that so as more and more people through thousands of years have lived, right? And we've created these thought patterns and these words and everything else. So when you pull these Aramaic and Hebrew words out, you're literally calling stuff into existence that have a greater way. It's just like going into a church that's been there for 1,000 years. It's already worked. The space-time's already worked there, so you're gonna have better experiences. Same thing. So this is like the cheat sheets of calling in some of these things. But what do you guys do when you meditate? Like, what is your process? Do you align? So you align with your other self, your higher self?
Because we believe that really the higher self is the key to who we all are. Individually, we all pretty much have an overself, and that overself, in its own learning experience and in its own helping of humanity, because that's really why we're here, it will send out manifestations, physical manifestations of itself to different time-space realities, and even other planets if it needs to. So in a certain sense, aligning to our higher self is really aligning to our greater presence, which can help to restore the body, the reconnection process. If you know what that is, it's really bringing through that perfect body of who you are into this reality. And it cleanses the mind as well. It's not just the body. I mean, the cells themselves can resonate, but the thought forms also need to be restored. So all of this really works together. And of course, I would take it one step further to also say that it's not just your overself, but you align with the greater Godhead. We consider that word. I know a lot of people don't want to use it. The greater angels, even any person of their own spiritual guides that they have. Sometimes it's indigenous, sometimes it's Eastern sages, whatever they really align to actually gives the time and the opportunity for them to align to that, because there's so much more than what's here. That's the main thing I think we have to get across.
But the secret is to think positive at all times. And to realize your incarnation here is to share the divine spark and to concentrate on that. And that will take you through most of the situations. I realize that there are certain situations that are even beyond the paradigm that require others to be involved in your personal life, but essentially is to invoke the light and realize the miracle ability that you have with this all-encompassing, fantastic mind that can reach out to the cosmic mind of the universe. And Marianne Williams said something that was very profound years ago. She said people are afraid to find out their own miracle working possibility. So we are living in the age of miracles. Truly, this is what we believe to be the age of the divine or Holy Spirit, where people can think on exceptionally high levels, combine their music with art and science from any number of cultures, and realize that we're forging a whole new interplanetary culture, and that we're ready to go on. And our indigenous brothers and sisters, like the ancient nomads and Meadowians, shepherds in the ancient Near East, taught us that we could be navigators with the stars if we had a song in our heart. And so that's what I wanted to emphasize. And again, those of you who are seeing this, we have a plethora of music available through our website, working with Jocelyn Smith in Berlin, who got Angela Merkel to dance. She was there at the Berlin Wall. We have worked with the late Alice Coltrane, Mrs. And Mr. Music with John Coltrane. We work with some of the most gifted, but they all have taken an opportunity to break with heavy music, heavy things that destroy the mind and vitality, and emphasize only the emotional body rather than the higher self or the spiritual self.
And I want to just say that with 8 billion people almost on this planet, we're getting really close to that 8 billion pretty quickly. Actually, it's really important that we're all here now. I mean, so many people have wanted to be here now, and we are here now, really to make a difference and to even just greet our brothers and sisters in space that will be coming, that we'll have contact with. But in addition to that, as the veils between dimensions are lifted, we're also going to be greeting those other levels of intelligence. We do need to use discernment. But what I like, you mentioned fire the grid. Do you know about that in Canada, that there was someone who used that term because she almost died in a car accident, her and her son, and they went underwater.
This is her.
It's the same
Yeah.
person. I want to give a plug for
Samara,
that.
yeah.
Then. And so she survived, but she was getting information and she taught people how to come around the bed of her son for, how many days?
Yeah, many days, 20
Many days.
minutes at a time.
Yeah, to literally keep his soul in his body, really, because he was kind of going out. And they said, no, he can stay here. But, people needed to bring his soul back into the body. I think it's an amazing thing because it really shows how healing one another works. And of course, that was almost a laying on hands. No negativity. She said, don't say, oh, I'm so sorry. I wish you were better. None of that.
She went right.
Bring the energy in, bring the soul in. Say, this is a
Scripture
great
speaks
place.
of every good and perfect thing from above. Well, now we have that vehicle to experience that, not to think about it at some distant place, light years away, but something that's right here with us now in this body. It becomes a transformative tabernacle.
And can you imagine if this is really going through major changes? We all need to be here. We all need to be the light.
Yeah, so she did bring her son back to life with instructions from cosmic beings, right? And she was then told later that she had to do this for the planet, that they were going to use the same technique for the planet. And when she talks about being in joy as being the strongest thing that we can feed the field, and we talk about being connecting to our higher self, and then what? Then what is that you get to create magic in this 3D
Reality.
world,
Yeah.
and we get to create magic together as the LightNet community, as light workers around the world. We get to show people how it's done. And here in Sedona, if we can cluster together more and more, it's contagious, literally contagious. This I can't believe we're getting away with this. I can't believe we can do this, right? Like, I can't believe my joy is causing your joy. It's like, what? Right? So we're going to open it up right now to some questions. These guys have predicted the future in their work. They've had a curious mind. They've investigated the other realms more than almost anybody on the planet today. So we open it up. What are the questions that you have for the Hurtalks? And we'll also ask the people online, but we'd like to start here in the center. Yes.
You mentioned the higher etheric mind, connecting to that, and she mentioned the reconnection process. You said if you know what that is. Are those the same thing? And also, how do you do that?
Well, the idea of axial tonal lines, which are first written in Dr. Hurtalk's book, Key 317 of the Keys of Enoch, was the fact that our physical body with all its chi meridians doesn't stop here, that you actually take those meridians and take them into other realities. Now, Eric Pearl took this to literally bring that higher overself energy, that perfect body, and align it to the physical form for healing techniques. But we would even go a little higher because we wrote a book called Overself Awakening. And that's because our overself is also growing and learning, and it's experiencing new realms and greater dimensions. So we can have, again, unlimited information if we tap into that higher self. You think about healing, that's one thing, it's the body. But when you look at Fire the Grid, it was the soul. The soul actually needed to come back into the physical body of the young child. And she was able to do that by bringing in joy, love, positive energy to say, hey, come back to the planet. It's okay to be here. And I think we all need that right now.
It's also a series of mind maps. If you can reach into my briefcase, I believe I have one of our textbooks on the divine names. It's the ability to train the mind to see what we call cosmic pictures. I've done this with the names of the Divine Father and the Divine Mother, where we begin to see how our,
And you're about to do a cosmic one, right?
Right, no, well,
Oh.
he's done the Father, we did this one, this is the Divine Mother, and we're doing one on actually the Christ's many names, so that's
Oh,
coming
so
up.
it's
shortly.
recognizing that the mind thinks holistically. And we've been deprived in the Western area of science from thinking in color. I mean, seeing every word expressing at least 7 basic colors.
And we like these pictures because it really is, we call them cosmograms, because you can be right here, but then you realize, well,
Through
hey,
meditation.
you're connected with this. Hey, you're connected with this. I mean, these are things that we don't think about. And in fact, it's so important, I think, for especially young people to realize there is so much more that you can do with your consciousness mind than what you've been trained or taught to do. You can really expand it. You can really experience different realms of reality. I had talked to a young guy who got married on another planet. I mean,
We
these
claim-
are realities,
We
I
have
didn't
to
doubt him.
tell our audience though, we're working with scientific feedback.
Yeah.
So again,
Well,
people
these are all in the
can imagine
consciousness
things,
body, yeah.
but we're working with the real story of having the mind maps fill in the missing pieces, which is sacred geometry, sacred color, working with the full spectrum of energy as a synthesis, and then added to that the sacred mantra or sacred expression that ties together the 7 chakras or energy points in your body. So that takes the ability of breath control, breathing, visualization, and a very positive attitude and use of psychology. So there's more to it that than just flipping the book and claiming you're on Mars or the moon. That's really science fiction. For us, is the realization that we are there, but in a different sense of vibration, in a different sense of how our mind is a quantum mind. It means it's not limited to one space. We work in all space. We can have one timeline or one dimension, but we can work with the 5th dimension, which is going into the other senses beyond the 5 senses.
I mean, that's how remote viewing works. I mean, it really is
Yeah.
part of that entangled universe. So what's the universe? Is it just your planet? Everyone always says it's the field, right? The field, everyone thinks the field is just the earth. Well, no, the field isn't just the earth. The field is all of the thought forms from all the realities that you could theoretically tune into.
Seeing
if you
all of the
wanted.
doves, as they say in Peru, the mother of the doves, you begin to see the mothering aspect of life. Wherever you look, you see
They're talking to
the
us.
Yeah, they're
positive
really-
energy that you can tap into and use.
Yeah, so I mean, if we think about we don't die when we die, right? Your soul continues to have another experience later, then literally that other soul that's there, that's us, you can jump into that vehicle, right? In your meditation or whatever it is, and do that. And then you still have your car,
Right,
your
so-
body here.
Exactly.
to
So
jump back in.
we don't call it reincarnation, because reincarnation is you come from here and then like maybe you wait a week or 7 years, whichever your philosophy is, and you go back into another body. We believe there's biogenesis. So you go from here to your higher self, then the higher self organizes where next you need to be. And in some cases, theoretically, it could be past time instead of even present time,
Interesting.
or it could be future.
Yeah.
And also it can be in other planetary
So as you grow
systems.
up in psychology and philosophy and spirituality, begin to realize there's certain steering mechanisms of the 5th and 6th dimension, where you actually can imprint in new information and reprogram your DNA. You can actually steer yourself into better relationships, higher forms of information, and higher artistic streams of consciousness. And that prepares you for the next round or level of existence, because life is eternal. The concept of limited space and time, of course, is an arbitrary tool that has been used by the traditions largely of the West. But in essence, in most traditions of the tree of life, there was the recognition that the spirit of life is eternal, is immortal.
And we would say also tapping into our cosmic family, because, in near-death experience, like Eben Alexander and others, they all see, their family on the other side. But in a sense, that's the family they're familiar with. How about all the other people they sometimes see? Is that part of a more higher evolutionary family?
So I'm going to have Ben share some links in the chat. We've got a whole slew of links for the Hurtalks.
I just want to show this one of the indigenous, which is one of my favorites of the gathering
And the white buffalo.
of the indigenous cultures. We feel the suffering and we feel the linkage with those whose voice has not been heard. So part of the experience is the greater love that has to be followed by actual gifts of charity and work to change the social situation, not just think about it, but to bring it into a physical incarnation.
Right, and we're really here to help the planet, help humanity, help the animals. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to check in to see if there's any questions online. So you guys can go ahead and type it into the chat. And also if there's any final questions here in the audience, we're gonna close with a meditation tonight, because again, you know, our new slogan is going to be just try it, right? Just try this stuff. You know, they have said, and Dean Rayden on the next session is going to say his main theory is that this is not specific to any person. We are all have these capabilities. It's not something special, right? It's just trying it, right? We're going to share the links there of the Hurtalks. We just started a new Telegram chat. We have one for Sedona people and we have one for the larger community, and you can find that in our light net when you go onto Telegram. And we're also going to share the links for signing up for the members only session with Dean Rayden, the chief scientist of IONS, who's also written an incredible book called Real Magic. So joining is $4.44 a month. It includes spoon betting parties. We're going to have a radio research group that's going to be kicking up. So he's going to share that link. Every other session that we do is for members only. This is a free one. So welcome to our family, and we're glad that you're here.
And can I put in a plug for Dean Rayden? He's fabulous. He does work for IONS, which is the Institute of Noetic Science that Edgar Mitchell set up. And Edgar Mitchell actually did a little bit of a remote viewing from space. That's now available. You can see it on the internet, where he tied into, was it Olaf Johnson, right?
One of our friends in the Midwest.
Yeah, so when he was coming back,
He turned off all his technology and just used the power of his mind to send certain geometric forms to his physical contactee on Mother Earth.
So that's why he came back and started the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And Dean Rayden's been one of the top remote, viewer researchers for the mind forever at that institute.
Yeah, he's going to be talking about real research about DNA, about mind over matter, all this spoon bending, all this, plasma, the split experiment. Like everyone talks about the split experience. Well, he actually did it. Okay.
And
This
the
is-
delayed choice.
This is future science.
Yeah.
Future cognition. He's got it all proved out. It's fascinating.
Future science is science guided by consciousness. It's not fundamental myth or magic where you simply move things on the table and that's the end of the game. No, it's your commitment to the divine, your commitment to God or the divine source to do more with this life, realizing the odds are against an individual voice out in the wilderness, but there's a collective voice that you can tap into by virtue of taking your mind through mind reach and finding those individuals throughout the world who are sensitive, who are gifted with their sense of creativity and artistic understanding, and also with a deeper sense of love, what we will call the Christ consciousness experience of higher awareness, that we're not alone in the universe. And this prepares us for being citizen diplomats to negotiate with the cosmic others when and if they do come, that we're prepared to have a positive response and not a negative.
Yeah, and the governments don't have to be the diplomats, and that's part of this whole citizen diplomacy that's like rumbling up. So do we have any other questions here from the audience or here in the center? Yeah, we have one back there.
Hi, it's a bit of a novel question, but I was curious about the previous civilization on Mars. Is there any more details on that, like how they wiped themselves out? Extent to any of this?
Good question.
Well, yeah, obviously. So the question is about, was there previous civilization on Mars? Who were they? How they wiped themselves out? I think the most important thing to understand is that we do believe that there was a civilization there. If we go back to Elizabeth Clark, she said really that there were civilizations on Venus, Earth, and Mars. They had to evacuate Venus because of the solar flares. This is just what she said. And that they had left a colony or so on Mars. Now, Mars, even right now, if we wanted to terraform Mars, there is not a sufficient magnetic field to hold an atmosphere. So, but we know that water once flowed on Mars. In fact, there may have been larger bodies of water on Mars than there
Planetary
were
ocean.
on Earth. So how did that exist? Well, there must have been something that took out the atmosphere. Right now, they're actually looking, and you're going to read up on this, how to restore enough of a magnetic field to hold an atmosphere. They're looking at like putting some sort of dishes or doing particle things with Phobos that would then create enough of a field, that's the satellite of Mars, to be able to establish that magnetic field. So something wiped out the magnetic field. It could have been, some people think that there was that the
Comet that went by that took away the atmosphere. Our friend Chris McKay at NASA Ames, Northern California, said it would take about 1,000 years to restore the environment, but 1,000 years is just a blip in the bucket of time, space, because 1,000 years would be really the, shall we say, re-engineering of the environment of Mars that would be sufficient for large numbers of
Well,
people.
there's a question that the asteroid belt, that's between, on the other side of Mars, maybe was at one time a planet. I think some people call it Marduk, but whatever. And then that somehow got destroyed and wiped out Mars. Or maybe Mars really is the planet of war, and maybe something really happened there. So right now, if we find life, and actually when Viking went up in 76, one of the interesting things with that is the label release experiment. They did 3 experiments. 2 were on gas and 1 was label release.
Gilbert Levin.
And Gilbert Levin actually said, hey, it's showing that there is microbial life on Mars. And everyone in 76 said, oh, no, that must be a fluke, whatever. It must be other kind of things that just acting like that. So right now, Perseverance rover is up there drilling holes. It's going to be the first rover to bring, well, it'll go back to the spaceship, and then samples, the actual samples of Mars will be coming back to JPL. Not to say if you look at a rock, it's going to have life, but anyway.
So to answer the question, there's a German film called Packing for Mars.
That he's in, yes.
And so if you're interested, it's available also in the English version. It was put out by Frank Jacob, a very talented film director a few years ago. Packing for Mars will answer your questions. Yes, in the lava tubes, there is evidence that there is other life that was there in the past tense.
And maybe there now. If you listen to Chaim Eshed from Israel, he said that even some of our top astronauts, almost like a Stargate experience, have been taken by aliens to both the moon and to Mars. And what's really interesting about the moon, we obviously we landed there in 69. We landed there in 1969, but we have not really spent a lot of time there for many, many years. Now it seems like the Artemis project, which is the next one, won't go back to 2025. Many people say the reason for that is that we were told to stay off of the moon and keep ourselves locked down.
Why? Because of military choice. You hear what I'm saying? Why? Because of military choice or dual-use technologies.
They don't want nuclear at all.
So this is why astronaut Mitchell, before he died, he was pushing what we call a treaty for the prevention of arms in outer space.
Right. So there's this treaty that astronaut Mitchell did with Scott Jones and our close associate Carol Rosin that talks about it's a space treaty to keep weapons of war out of space. It's hard to even get something that simple passed on this planet.
So we have a couple questions. We only have a few more minutes, so we'll have to keep these kind of short. No, that's great. But let's take some from the online audience.
So the first question, someone was mentioning, you can't find the Intergalactic Space Law on your website. Where can we find that?
Yeah, how can they get this book? It's not even quite out yet, right?
Yeah, it just came out. Actually, it's originally published in Brazil because the co-author is a Brazilian, but we will have some copies.
It's in Portuguese. We just have a few.
Well, this is in English, yeah.
So how do they get it?
They'll have to order it through the Academy for Future Science.
Early next year, of course, it's the end of the year.
Okay,
already.
so
English speaking, go to our Academy for Future Science.org website. If you are in South America seeing this discussion, it's in the Portuguese edition. You write in Portuguese to the Academy for Future Science in Brazil.
Yeah, no, or we'll have some on our website as well, or write to us at info@keysofenoch.org and we'll get back to you with some information. But I will also highly in the interim recommend Alan Hynek's book. Alan Steinfeld's book, kind of rhymes together. And if you haven't seen it, the people in there not only are ourselves, but Linda Mullen-Howe, Whitley Strieber, John Mack, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, Carolyn Corey. So this is a great book. Everyone's written a chapter as well as Alan Stein.
Another is the Newfound book dealing with the UFO ET Almanac.
You're right. There's something called Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, which has different races. Go ahead.
Yeah. And we're gonna be putting all these links and stuff into the show notes and also into these living libraries that we're gonna be building. Let's take one. Do we have just one final question here? Okay.
So someone mentioned when one prays too much with the divine names at night, it's really hard to be able to sleep after. Is there a way to channel that energy out to avoid the insomnia?
Well, again, this is a very subjective question. I would say use less of the divine names. Again, there's a plethora of names given to those who choose a way of contemplative life.
But there's different ways of doing it. So if you do it really fast, like, really just shocking, then that's not gonna, then that might keep you up at
It'll
night.
be
'cause you're
overloading.
energized. But if you at night choose like the Om Shanti, I mean, that's gonna put you into a restful
So
state.
use it with a deep sense of respect for your body that may not be able to handle higher levels of energy until it is graduating through long months of self-reflection.
Maybe use like the shorter sounds of doing it in the morning time when you're meditating, and then the longer ones in the evening. And it's really up to the person because everyone has their own preferences on names. And we do use Eastern names, Western names, all different types of higher energy names that we feel.
The
vibrant.
importance is the control of your breath, so you can elongate and not just rush through names like you're going through a telephone book. And also using spiritual music to quietly build your energy field up and to rest in the energy field where you don't have to vocalize. You are
Right.
just in that higher state
Right.
of consciousness.
Feel the vibration coming over you to calm you, to relax you. And even some techniques in the Sanskrit is where you resonate the sound within yourself. You don't even have to do if you're, sleeping with someone next to you or down the hall or something that doesn't like you doing the names. You can actually resonate that energy within you. There's techniques even from the Sanskrit tradition that teaches you how to do that.
So the evening has come to a close. We're gonna spend this last 5 minutes in a meditation. Perhaps we can call in galactics in this moment so that we can have experiences in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts, messages that may come through for you. And we always encourage you guys to look to the stars. So you're not gonna see a UFO and you don't look up, So let's really open our hearts. I highly encourage you to check out the music of the Hurtalks. They lit up the pyramids with their music, and they've caught, it's their music is equally incredible as their science and their books. And so here we go. Let's close our eyes and do a meditation to close. So.
And if we can think of the pyramid, the sign and the seal for most historic cultures as a vortex of opening the body to a higher level of experience. Let us feel this golden pyramid over our heads. Let us feel our breathing of light from the golden pyramid on the top of our heads, which is a sign of the Trinity of body, mind, and spirit. Come through the upper part of our mind, our mind's eye, down through our throat, and then down through our spinal column, all the way down to the lower parts of our body. And let us feel that the spinal column is like a musical staff, a musical vibratory field. As we quietly feel this vibratory field evoke of golden light around our body, let us quietly pass ourselves around this little blue-green planet called Mother Earth.
And so let us see the vibrations of the wings of the dove encircling Mother Earth. Let us feel the vibrations of the sacred names connected with the power of the Ruach. Ruach means breath, but Ruach also means spirit. And feel that vibration engulfing not only your own body, but those around you, or if you want to, remote view to whoever needs your help, your energy right now. Send the power of the Ruach. We sometimes say Ruach HaKodesh, which in Hebrew means the Holy Spirit, but we can just take for tonight the power of the Ruach. We're going to show a picture for those that wish to open their eyes, and I'll say it 12 times for the vibrations of the light, and Dr. Hurtalk sometimes sings it. Ruach. Say it together.
Ruach, 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 Ruach.
And visualize now that white triangle over your head becoming a white dove and moving over the mountaintops of the world, over Mount Fuji in Japan, over the sacred Himalayas in India, over the sacred Alps in Central Europe, then across the deserts of Africa into North and South America, the Alps, and the great mountains of North and South America, the Grand Tetons in the north, and the Andes in the south. And as the dove with your mind's eye passes over these mountaintops, this golden triangle reappears as a capstone upon each of the mountaintops. As you go around the world, you begin to see the tops of the mountains becoming sacred geometries. And these geometries form one great wheel, a mandala of a spinning planet. Feel yourself breathing light and love and prosperity into each one of these mountainous areas. And from these mountain peaks, then the light, the sound, the love will cascade to the surrounding areas. I'm going to intone now this ruach and the second word Elohim, which means in the ancient biblical sense, the divine source of Godhead. Listen very carefully, 12 times for the 12 divisions of humanity. Ruach Elohim, 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 Ruach Elohim. And then we're going to intone this. I'm going to add this into a musical vibration. Just listen. This time we see the world come together as a vibratory matrix of sound, of joy, with each of the cultures unified at the base of the pyramids, with children holding hands from one cluster to another, from one pyramidal geometry to another. All around Mother Earth, around the equator, there are children of light from all cultures holding hands. We invoke this for planetary unity and spiritual oneness. Ruach Elohim, Ruach Elohim, Ruach Elohim, Ruach Elohim. From the north into the south, from the east into the west, from that which is above to that which is below, O divine source, divine Elohim, make my heart into a tabernacle of joy, of purpose, of celebration. We may gather others into the great work of what is coming. Not simply contact with cosmic others, but unity with our divine family from which we have come.
And so let us journey again into the heavenly realms, into the multidimensional realms of the 8th dimension, the 12th dimension, the 24th dimension. And let us realize that we are not alone. There's 10,000 times 10,000 of beings in those realms, myriads and myriads, billions and billions. And those realms are only a small part of the vastness of creation. From our universe to other universes, to the multiverse, we are one.
As we come back, let us embrace the fatherless child, the little person that has no one to pray for him or her. Let us embrace the animal nature, Let us embrace the mothering nature of life.
And let us say what I started earlier, the Om, which is the universal sound, and then 3 Shantis, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
For the
means
Trinity vehicle.
For peace, let's feel that peace within our hearts, and then an Om again. So actually you end up with Om, Shanti, 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 Om.
Together.
Om,
Shanti, 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 Om.
Om.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti,
Om.
Om. Shanti, 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 Om.
Om.
Shanti, 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 Om.
Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, 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 Om. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti,
And
Om.
bring that peace within you so that you feel peaceful, and you can radiate the peace out to all places, to all people. And literally it becomes a healing energy of love, unconditional love for everyone and everything around you.
And let that Om be the omnipotence, the omniscience. Let it be the omnidirectional aspect of your new self. As we read also in Psalm 51, may my lips declare your praise, O Divine One, O Most High.
And may it also be our own omnipresence, that we are everywhere we need to be to help humanity, to help the world, to help even to work with other levels of intelligence, to be part of the cosmic awakening.
May our spine thus be the shepherd's staff and work with the good shepherd. And so we look beyond directions of the past into the future. Into the future we go. World without end, universe without end, house of many mansions without end, immortal soul without end. Indeed, we discover that we are human and divine in partnership and are blessed in this form of the cosmic dance. Amen, 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 and amen. May peace be with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Zenka.
Thank you guys so much. That was incredible. I hope you feel something cool in your body, and I hope you just keep trying it. You know, I've never really done meditation with talking out loud and chanting and things like that. And so it's a whole new experience, an experiment, and I hope that you enjoy it and try it. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight, leaving your legacy of 49 years of research and curiosity and creation and music and words and pictures and experiments. It's really, really inspiring to be around you as a power couple with this masculine and feminine balance as you travel the world and share your knowledge. We're so grateful that you came to us tonight and you're here. So
Thank you so much, and keep up your wonderful work. And all of you out there, let go and let God, let the divine spark that you came with in your incarnation.
And we say ad astra to the stars.
All of you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.